Alright, welcome back to another Roblox game development programming tutorial. In this tutorial section here, we're going to talk a little bit about GUI, GUI, whatever you want to call it. It's also called UI in most other tech world like places. I shouldn't say tech world, it's mainly known as UI. And yeah, so today we're going to dive into how local scripts integrate with UI. And this is a really important concept because, for example, when I play this game here, if you watched my last video on an introduction to, GUI and the creation of how to create this right here, this is great and all. However, there's a very big issue here, and that is I have this button, and that's great, but when I go to click play here, notice what happens. I'm going to go ahead and click play here. The GUI here is going to load in, and that's all good. But when I click play, I can't play the game. And as I'm sure you can imagine, that's a problem, right? And this is when scripts really start to come into play here, and why you have to use scripts when you're generating and using UI. So let's go ahead and look at a good example of this. So essentially what you want to do here is you're going to create a local script. Most of the time you will not be creating a server script underneath a GUI element. That's typically a bad idea. The server really doesn't need to know, and not only on top of that, that code that you write under the server script will be replicated for every client, which is not a good thing. So almost always you want a local script whenever you're working with Screen GUI, and again that comes back to the idea of client and server. You want to this is only client side stuff. This isn't server code. And essentially, if you come from a different environment, maybe you're from web development or something like that, think of this as like where you would put your JavaScript, right? And I'm not talking about like the Node stuff. I'm talking about this is where like your vanilla JavaScript or like your Angular would go, right? And essentially, this local script here is going to handle all the logic behind how this button here is going to act. So I'm going to go ahead and go local button is equal to the script dot parent, and essentially I'm saying this because the script here is parented to this button. So whenever I talk about button, I'm talking about this specific button here called play, and I can name it differently here. But just like when we created a part and we had a script underneath the part, right? And I would type things like local part is equal to the script dot parent, and I could access different part properties, like color, for example, and all of that. So too, you can do the exact same thing here with GUI. So if I click button here and I click dot, I'm going to get all the elements that make up the button, right? And not only that, but I also have events that the button can do, methods. Those were the methods, and then events as well, right? And all of these are going to be super important, as you will see here in a while on why, especially the activated one. But just like that, I can change things such as it being visible, its font, its position on the screen, all this stuff. So let's go ahead and do a nice good example here. Let's change the color of this. So if I come down here and I look at this right here, I want to take the play button and I'm going to change its color. So I'm going to click button and I'm going to go background color 3, right? And this is going to take a color 3 dot new. And then here I can give it a new color. So I can make it, I don't know, blue. Maybe a light blue, kind of like light blue today, right? And as you can see, I get the light blue here. And then also, again, if you're from web development, you'll have the actual hexadecimal syntax right there, which you can use as well. And then here's your red, green, and blue stuff as well. And you can also mess around with the, all of this kind of stuff as well. But Roblox tried to relate this as much to CSS and regular HTML development. So you can kind of keep that in mind. Okay, but as you see, when I'm going to go ahead and play this game, this element will no longer look like this. It will be this new color that I've just assigned here. And as you can see, I have this new color here. So just like normal scripting, local scripts aren't really any different. The same way that if you went from Angular to Node in web development, the JavaScript doesn't change, right? You're still essentially doing the same kind of stuff, but it's just the idea that all the code that you put in a local script is only loaded on the client and not the server, right? So let's go ahead and just look through all the different things that you can kind of do, or some of the different events that you can do here. So one of the big ones is obviously going to be activated. Now, activated is important because activated is cross-platform. And I'm going to say that again. Activated is cross-platform, meaning that you can activate it on controller, you can activate it on mobile, and you can activate it by clicking mouse button 1 down. So you don't have to do the game get service. Sorry, I don't know why caps lock goes on. Get service, and then do user input service, and then do what is it? User, or then I have to set this to a variable, so I have to local UIS is this, and then UIS dot, and then do changed or get the input, input begin connect, right? This is all good and all, but you don't really have to do a lot of this. You would just check and see if this button gets activated. So I'm going to go ahead and do button dot, and I'm going to go activated right here. Now I'm going to connect a function. And this is known as a callback function, or an anonymous function, which is going to be binded to this specific event here. Here, this is going to take the input object and then how many times this has been clicked, right? And you can use the input object here, but you don't really have to use it too much. This is essentially like, let's say you wanted something different to happen via mobile versus console versus keyboard and mouse, then you could get the input object, but you don't really have to worry about that too much. Essentially, for our start screen, whenever this button is activated, I want the script parent to not be visible. So I'm going to go ahead, or excuse me, the button's parent not to be visible. I'm going to go button parent, which is going to be the frame, right? So that's this frame here. And I'm going to grab dot visible, which is going to take a Boolean data type, and I'm going to set that to false. So essentially, whenever somebody clicks this button now, it's going to make the frame false. So I go ahead and click play here. As you see, here's my start screen. Now when I click this, you'll see here is all my code. Here's the player GUI, which is automatically replicated from starter GUI. This automatically gets replicated into here. Here's the screen GUI that was replicated for me. And then here's the frame, here's the player, and then there's the local script. Okay, and the local script says when I click this button, the GUI is no longer visible. It's still in my player GUI, but it goes away here, and that's essentially how you can create the most basic form of a start screen. But again, this is the whole idea of now creating client-side code that can essentially allow you to navigate your UI elements. And this is a super important concept because this is how you would create like a play, and then later obviously this would be like your welcome frame. It's like welcome. Right, but then later you may have another frame, right? And this frame would not be visible at the start of the game. Or actually a better way to do this would just be to duplicate the current frame. So I may have another frame here, we'll call this how to play. How to play, and we'll make how to play false invisibility. And we'll go ahead, this would be true, but let's go ahead and just style the how to play so we can see, so it doesn't look the same here. So we would then name this, down here, we would do how to play. Right, and you would click, this could then be play still, right? But then you could have this, and then how to play would be how to play right there. And then maybe you have a play button here. They click this, and then now maybe you'll have a description, which could be a scrolling frame. and it says nothing in the game yet. Come down here to the text. There should be a text. Oh, maybe I need to put a text box. My mistake, guys. Text box. Boom. Go. Click on here. And go. ID. I don't know. How to play. LOL. Quick play. Right? So this would be like a how to play screen, right? And this will only get activated essentially whenever you click a button here. So then if I went here and duplicated this play button, I could then create a now how to play elements. This could be how to play. How to play. Boom. And then in here, I could create another local script that makes the parent visibility false. And then I would go button dot parent, right? So this is going to go from this button's parent dot parent. So I'm at the screen GUI dot how to play dot visible is going to be true. So now I just went up and down to this how to play, which is currently not visible, right? Play is visible. And essentially when you click this, this should become invisible. Excuse me. This should become invisible. And then this will become visible. Right? And now uncheck this, come back to here, check this. Right? Oops, my bad. There we go. And then we should probably change this to how to play. How to play. And boom. Okay, so let's go ahead and see this in action. This is the whole concept here. Okay, so I load in, here it is. If I click play, it'll allow me to play like we saw before. If I click how to play, it's gonna give me the how to play, which I don't know how to play, right? And then you click play and it loads. So this is the idea of how you can load in client-side Lua code to manipulate your graphical user interface to do specific things. So I hope this helps. This is the whole idea. And this is essentially the basics on how to create a front end in Roblox Studio. So if you have any questions, please feel free to leave a comment and I will see you all in the next one.